4 flex slots where you see things like Fort Bolt, Pyroblast, sometimes some Spell Pierces, Chain Lightnings, and so forth. And it looks like Patnode this weekend is on 1 Pyroblast, 3 Fort Bolts, and 16 lands in the deck.
Merriam with a Scalding Tarn and a passing of the turn. Patnode's going to start things off with an aggressive slant. Coming on in here with a Monastery Swiftspear. Merriam already down to 19. We saw Brian Cook earlier yesterday, where he's playing a different build of Storm, where he has Burning Wish in his deck and a small engine there. Merriam not taking the Burning Wish approach.
No, more cantrips, 7 discard spells in the deck. Grim Tutor, Ad Nauseam, Pass and Flames, and Tendril of Agony is the one-ofs, but no tutor package.
Ross going to search up an Underground Sea here with the Scalding Tarn. So tie game here momentarily as he goes down to 19.
The Burning Wish version makes the deck a tad bit slower at times, gives it some flexibility, but at the expense of sideboard slots.
Ross going to play a land here in a Swamp. And now here's a copy of Brainstorm. So 3 cards coming, 2 of course will go back.
And the discard spells play a pretty interesting role in this matchup. Ross is not really trying to use them to disrupt the hand. He's not looking to attack Brainstorms and Ponders necessarily. He wants to save them for the turn that he's going off so he can clear out Force of Will, which is the most problematic reactive card that Nicholas has in the matchup.
Here's a Duress. Ross wants to see exactly what Nicholas is up to, and we'll see here with 2 Brainstorms, a Treasure Cruise, a Young Pyromancer, a Force of Will, and a Misty Rainforest. Tough hand to break up here with Duress. Getting the knowledge is certainly important, and perhaps Ross will take a Force of Will with them, but those Brainstorms could turn into anything.
Absolutely. Though, if Nicholas is spending turn 2 casting Brainstorms, looking for help in lieu of casting Young Pyromancer and getting more pressure to play, Ross is not necessarily upset with that outcome.
Days to draw here for Patnode. Merriam doesn't know about that one, though this Storm deck is fairly good at playing over the top of Days.
It's usually something that can, if you aren't aware whether or not they have Days necessarily, you can usually price it into your turn going off.
It's a Brainstorm here for Patnode. 3 cards coming, 2 will be going back. There is a fetch land in Misty Rainforest. There's an attack for 2 for the Monastery Swiftspear. Merriam down to 16. And Patnode will just simply pass the turn back. Pyroblast also in Nicholas's hand, as he waits patiently to see what Ross will do in his 3rd turn of the game, which is a copy of Cabal Therapy. We'll see what Ross is going to name here with this. Of course, he does have some information about what's in hand. And he'll go with Force of Will. He'll see a Brainstorm, a Daze, a Young Pyromancer, a Treasure Cruise, and a copy of Pyroblast. And if he's naming Force of Will, it leads me to believe perhaps he's going to try to go off here.
I think so too, although this is the worst case scenario for Ross, seeing Nicholas with a way to shuffle his deck and a Brainstorm. So there's no Force of Will in hand right now, but Nicholas does have opportunities to draw to it.
Now what's interesting here is Ross isn't forced to go off in this situation. His life total is still quite high at 16, but every draw step that the Blue-Red Delver deck gets to take is somewhat scary, as that's one more draw step that can lead to a Force of Will or a Daze or other permission spells.
You can rarely play around it once you've committed any of your resources to attacking their hand. You only have so many cards to work with, and you don't want to give them more time to draw their cards, so you just accept that you're going to lose the Force of Will off the top a percentage of the time.
That's just life sometimes, I suppose.
But that was not a good hand for Ross to see. Daze in the hand as well, on top of the ability to find Force of Will potentially with a shuffle and a Brainstorm.
You see, this is giving him a little bit of pause here on what he's supposed to do.
Ross with a significant background in mathematics, so I have to imagine that helps a lot when you're playing a deck like Storm.
Absolutely.
Helps shortcut a lot of the operations.
There's a Lotus Petal. This is a Dark Ritual with the ability to pay for Days. And this is him basically saying, I'm not scared of your Days. I'm hoping your Brainstorm doesn't net something positive.
And I think this is a good spot to daze because it cuts Ross off of a colored mana. If you allow the Dark Ritual to resolve, he has 3 black and the lowest pedal can be anything. The daze only trades with one mana at any point regardless. So at this point, you at least make sure that you cut him off of a color mana other than black.
Well, it's always tricky about playing against this deck is when are you supposed to make your move with the daze or the other counter spells. Merriam's going to pay for the daze. Now Dark Ritual is resolved, so 3 black in the pool. Here is a copy of Cabal Ritual. That'll bring him up a little bit higher. And here's a Lion's Eye Diamond. This is an Infernal Tutor. With that on the stack, you have to imagine he's going to crack that Lion's Eye Diamond. And he will choose a color here. So this is going to bring him up to 5 mana total.
And as I mentioned before, the die is cast here. Ross is willing to accept a loss to Force of Will in this spot. Lion's Eye Diamond sacrificing for red mana. And Patnode will be brainstorming here in response. And Ross with a pretty flush graveyard to work with if the Past in Flames is able to resolve, assuming that that's the tutor target with Infernal Tutor, which I suspect it is.
Yeah, 2 options here actually. He can go the Past in Flames route, or he can go grab himself an Ad Nauseam. He wouldn't have any mana floating, and he hasn't played a land yet this turn, so there are 2 ways that he can go. Patnode going to cast a Brainstorm response. He can nip this all in the bud if he finds a copy of Force of Will, which he has not.
Yeah, the coast is clear now for Ross. Even a daze might have influenced things a little bit, but there's nothing in Nicholas's hand now.
So Merriam picking his spot and going for it, and it looks like it's going to work out thus far.
I like it. You're always sweating in Ross's spot here. It's not the safest spot to go off, but the odds are good enough.
Now what will he search for is the question. Two black and 3 red in the pool. He's going to get himself a Past in Flames. He will cast Past in Flames. Now he will cast Dark Ritual, and there's a Cabal Ritual. Here's a copy of Infernal Tutor.
And the Cabal Ritual here still thresholded even after the Dark Ritual resolve, 7 in the graveyard. Tendrils with enough mana.
And plenty of Storm.
Yep, that's well past 20.
Ross Merriam going to win game number 1 here over Nicholas Patnode. Storm will take down Blue-Red Delver in the first game. Part of the reason players have moved towards Storm, they like their Blue-Red Delver matchup.
Yeah, game 1's gotten so much better against Delver decks. Post-board, if the Delver deck wants to, they can make it really challenging, but having a great game 1 helps a lot, and Ross there able to pretty easily beat a Delver draw that included Daze and Force of Will and a good clock.
Well, we'll take a look at Patnode's sideboard here and see if things do get a little bit better for him. He's got a Pyroblast, a Red Elemental Blast, 2 copies of Smash the Smithereens, an Elect Trickery, a Fluster Storm, a Pithing Needle, 2 copies of Price of Progress, 2 Grafdigger's Cages, 2 Sulfuric Vortex, and a Hydroblast.
So the Red Blasts are fine in this matchup. Even though Ross is able to go off with primarily red and black spells, hitting any cantrip is going to be valuable. I think that Grafdigger's Cage is a little bit narrow. It does handle Past in Flames, but Ross can still win with Ad Nauseam. So the cage may or may not come in, and the 2 copies of Fluster Storm here are excellent.
What do we have on Merriam's side?
2 copies of Xanted Swarm, 3 copies of Carpet of Flowers, 3 copies of Abrupt Decay, 2 copies of Massacre, a Pyroclasm, an Empty the Warrens, a Tropical Island, and 2 copies of Chain of Vapor. So what really stands out to me here, the Carpet of Flowers helps a lot against the soft permission like Daze, Spell Pierce, Fluster Storm, and so forth. Past that, there are some other options. For example, Abrupt Decay can come in if Ross just wants to protect himself against the beatdown that Nicholas brings to the table, as can the Pyroclasm, though I suspect those are for explicitly anti-combo cards and not just against any random opponent who happens to be bringing cheap permanents to the table. Past that, I think the Empty the Warrens can also come in as an alternate kill, as Blue-Red Delver really isn't equipped to handle goblins. There's no easy out of the deck, there's no sweeper, no engineered plague, and so forth. So if Ross wants to bring in the Empty the Warrens here as well, I think that's fine.
Well, these players will finish sideboarding up, and we'll get ready for game number 2 here. But while we do wait, regionals right around the corner. It's going to be February 7th before you know it. And you can plant your flag at one of these 14 locations.
Yeah, 14 locations during Pro Tour weekend. All the dates are up and locations as well. You can head over to starcitygames.com/regionals for more information, but the map here will show you where those events are scattered across the country, and a free playmat for the first 200 participants at each regional championship.
It's going to be a lot of fun as you do see all 4 squirrels together on that playmat. February 7th, Winter Regionals. Plant your flag. Find out more information at starcitygames.com/regionals.
Should be a fun event, and potentially, though not 100%, potentially when I will be competing in myself.
You'll be there.
I might not be in San Diego that weekend. That's the only thing.
Oh,
if
what
I
are you
am
going
in
to
San
do?
Diego,
What, are you going to be in New Jersey?
no.
Unbelievable.
But if I am in the area, I'll be battling.
We'll see if Ross Merriam can get the job done here. Close this one out pretty quickly. Or perhaps Patnode will force a 3rd game. He'll be on the play here after all.
It gets a little bit easier post-board. Ross does not have a great sideboard for the matchup, and that's a consequence of playing Storm. You can only shave out so many of your combo pieces, so your opponent dials up the hate, and you sort of just have to work your way through it. There's no easy way out.
Patnode going to take a look at his 7 cards. Looks like he's happy enough. Merriam will keep as well, looks like. So game number 2 will begin with the Scalding Tarn as Nicholas goes down to 19. He'll search for Volcanic Island, predictably. And now here's a Ponder.
Somewhat good news here for Ross, as the worst case scenario for Storm in these post-board games is Nicholas starts off with one of his 1-mana threats and then can leave up a wall of counterspells for the rest of the game. So Nicholas not doing anything threatening on the first turn. It seems small, but it does matter quite a bit. Gives Ross a little bit of extra breathing room.
A little shuffle action here with the Ponder. A little mystery card coming here for Patnode in just a moment. Merriam will draw. He'll play a Polluted Delta, quickly sacrifice that, go down to 19 and play a copy of Duress. Wants to get an idea of what Patnode is working with. Nicholas does not want to show him though, and he will cast a Daze. Patnode will draw. Copy of Misty Rainforest. See his hand has another copy of Daze along with a copy of Pyroblast.
Very common, just bring in every counter spell, even if they can't necessarily counter everything every time. You just need to cut Ross off of as much resources as you possibly can.
And the big concern here is that his hand is perhaps a little too reactive at this point. No pressure.
Exactly, that's the good thing here for Ross. If one of those counter spells in his hand becomes a Delver of Secrets or a Monastery of Swiftspear, this is very different. As it stands, Ross has time.
Gemstone Mine going to come in here for Merriam. Now here's a copy of Brainstorm. And Patnode's going to sacrifice the Scalding Tarn, go down to 18, and I have a feeling we're going to see a Pyroblast here.
And you may wonder, why is Nicholas going to Pyroblast here? You know, Ross can't shuffle his deck. He probably can't win the game this turn. But it's just trying to trade 1-for-1 as much as possible with Storm because they need a critical mass of resources to be able to do anything threatening.
Well, there's a Pyroblast.
By the way, the flavor on this card is a 10 out of 10. This is one of the sweetest Magic cards of all time.
Oh, you're a pro Gemstone Mine.
Yes, this is an awesome design.
Well, here's a Cabal Therapy now. And that will get dazed. These exchanges do feel somewhat favorable for Merriam at this point.
Well, he is low on total resources here, which is a problem, and Nicholas still with Force of Will in hand. But it is nice that Ross is under no pressure. That helps quite a bit.
Here's Cabal Therapy yet again. Force of Will was the name, and it's a hit. And looks like Patnode is stuck with just lands in his hand. So these discard spells have proven to be quite powerful here for Merriam.
Yeah, just a daze and lands, not a good hand. Though it remains to be seen how much Ross can do with the 3 cards he has left in his hand.
And that's the big question. Young Pyromancer the draw.
That's something. I mean, I think that the ideal draw for Nicholas in that spot is probably Treasure Cruise. This is not a bad second option.
Merriam will take a draw step. Does he have that critical mass of cards? And can he do it while playing around a daze is the question. He knows the contents of Patnode's hand. He knew the Young Pyromancer was the draw that turn. And Merriam going to sacrifice a Scalding Tarn, go down to 18. Ross doing that finger motion. I think you know what that means.
And he knows that all he has to do is beat a daze.
Yep.
He knew Nicholas's hand, and he knew that the card that was added last turn was Young Pyromancer.
He'll play Dark Ritual. Now it's time for a Cabal Ritual that will have Threshold. Now here's the Lion's Eye Diamond. This is an Infernal Tutor with it on the stack. Crack the LED. And when you know all you have to do is beat a daze, it's pretty easy from here.
Yeah, this is exactly what we saw last game. You know, Ross just generating so much mana, able to easily overpower a daze. And it's going to be a pretty fast kill through quite a bit of permission.
Past in Flames is the route he's going to go. And like you said, this is exactly what we saw in the last game. He will cast Past the Flames. And from here, he can cast some more rituals, perhaps cast a Therapy or a Duress or what have you to make sure the storm count is high enough. But he will cast an Infernal Tutor. And many drills of agony will be cast. Nicholas Patnode is already picking up his cards. I believe he knows that it's over. Duress will be cast here. And that is going to do it. Ross Merriam's going to win this match here over Nicholas Patnode. 2-0. Storm takes down Blue-Red Delver. And you can see why players have moved this direction with the popularity of Blue-Red Delver.
Another thing that you can see here, you have Blue-Red Delver, and some of these decks splash black for Cabal Therapy and some do not. The decks that often do not splash for Cabal Therapy have more Flusterstorms and Spell Pierces and that kind of stuff in the sideboard. And it's easy to look at those two things and say, well, it looks like 6 of one and half dozen of another. Why does it matter whether it's Cabal Therapy or counter spells? They're all just one